Stephen Yates is a former Deputy Assistant to Vice President Dick Cheney for National Security Affairs, and he joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us, first of all.
Thank you, Heather.
So what can our new Secretary of State do to improve relations in the region?
Well, there are certain limits on what he can do, because I think what the region is hungering for most is a clear strategy from President Obama about what he intends to do to accomplish particular objectives and what resources is he prepared to deploy in the region in order to achieve those objectives. So Secretary Kerry has a daunting challenge. We have freedom fighters in Syria who've been fighting a civil war approaching its third year, and they're hungry for the resources necessary to win a war. We have instability across the broader region, politics in Egypt, but also across northern Africa. And a lot of people there are looking for what the United States might be willing to do to lead. And then there's always Iran.
And Stephen, I'd like to go through this, piece by piece with you, just briefly. You mentioned Syria's civil war. Just last week, Washington announced an additional $60 million in assistance to help the opposition provide what they're calling basic services. Is this, do you believe, the beginning of a new approach with the administration finally becoming more engaged in Syria?
It sounds as though they're trying to sell it as a new approach, and I think a new approach is in fact needed. But humanitarian assistance is not what these rebels need in order to win a civil war. And so I think there's still a great deal of frustration among the opposition. As imperfect as they may be, they are the opposition to the government that President Obama said must go. And the State Department continues to hold in place a regime that potentially sanctions regional allies like Turkey and other important neighbors from taking the action we would like to achieve the objective we have stated.
On Iran and its nuclear program, your thoughts on that?
Well, unfortunately, in days we've had sequester politics send a very negative signal to the region with the withholding of the deployment of an aircraft carrier. And it's, I think, increasingly clear it's not just an Israeli political or security issue and something that their supporters in the United States talk about. Major Gulf Coast allies are very concerned about Iran's increasing influence in the region and the lack of any meaningful pushback by a coalition the United States participates in. And there's a giant middle ground between plain talk and a muscular military intervention. I think these allies are hungry for real power.
All right, and finally, we only have about 60 seconds left. Israel and Palestine, your thoughts there?
Well, I think, if anything, over the last 2 years, we've learned that solving the Israeli-Palestinian issue is not, in fact, a prerequisite to managing the broader region. We have the turbulence post-Arab Spring, which I think is just leaps and bounds more important. And hopefully that will remain the focus, and the administration won't get sucked into what I think is a trap in negotiating Israeli-Palestinian peace. Yeah,
Tunisia, Libya, Yemen, Iraq, Egypt, all in a state of unrest right now, let's say. Thank you so much for joining us, Stephen Yates. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Dangerous, uncertain world out there.